He wakes up every morning, and the first thing he does is reach for his phone to check what he missed. He scrolls through photos of people living lives that seem better, brighter, and more fulfilling than his could ever be. Bigger homes, better jobs, happier families, perfect bodies he'll never have no matter how hard he tries to change himself. By the time he gets out of bed and stands up, he already feels like he's losing a race he never signed up for. His name is Daniel, and for the past 3 years, comparison has been eating him alive from the inside without mercy or pause. Stay until the end of this story, because what happens on the last day will completely change how you see your own reflection forever. Daniel is 31 years old, works in graphic design, and lives alone in a small apartment directly across from a quiet park. He's not unsuccessful by any standard measure. He's just convinced that everyone else around him is doing it so much better than him. At work, he sees a colleague get promoted to a higher position and immediately thinks about everything he lacks in his own career. At family dinners, his younger brother talks excitedly about his new business, and Daniel goes quiet, sinking into his chair with invisible shame. On social media platforms, he watches old classmates buy houses, get engaged to beautiful partners, travel the world with ease and endless smiles. And every single time, the same thought appears like a shadow in his mind. I'm falling behind and I'll never catch up again. It starts small at first, just a feeling, a whisper in the back of his mind that he can barely hear or notice. But over time, it grows louder and more insistent until it becomes the voice he hears most clearly above all other thoughts. He stops sharing his creative work because it never feels good enough compared to the polished perfection he sees online every single day. He avoids conversations about the future because he doesn't want to admit out loud that he feels stuck in the same place. He cancels plans with friends repeatedly because being around their success and happiness makes him feel completely invisible and small and worthless. His mother notices the change in his behavior and energy and asks him gently if something is wrong with him or his life. He tells her he's fine and tries to smile, but she doesn't believe him for a second because she knows her son too well. One evening, she invites him over for dinner at her home, and he reluctantly agrees, dragging himself there with no real energy or hope. She's made his favorite meal with care and love, but he barely touches it, pushing the food around his plate like a child. Across the table, she watches him with the kind of deep concern and aching sadness that only a mother can carry in her heart. "You're not here with me right now," she says softly, her voice breaking just slightly as she searches his face for answers and truth. He looks up at her, confused and caught off guard by the directness of her words and the pain in her gentle eyes. "You're sitting in front of me physically, but you're somewhere else, mentally, emotionally, spiritually," she continues with a trembling but steady voice full of love. "You've been somewhere else for a long time now, and I don't know how to reach you or bring you back to us." Daniel feels something crack and splinter inside his chest, but he doesn't know how to respond or what words could possibly explain this emptiness. She reaches across the table and holds his hand tightly, her touch warm and familiar and filled with the kind of unconditional love. "I don't know what's weighing on you so heavily, but I need you to know something important that I've always believed," she says firmly. "You are enough exactly as you are, Daniel. You don't need to be anyone else or have anything more than what you have." Her words hang in the air between them, and for a moment, he wants to believe them with every fiber of his being. But the voice in his head is so much louder, and it tells him she's just being kind because she's his mother. A few weeks later, Daniel is assigned a major project at work, something that could open real doors for him professionally and creatively. But instead of feeling excitement or motivation, he feels dread spreading through his body like ice water in his veins and bones. He starts comparing his ideas to the work of famous designers he follows online, people with massive audiences and endless talent and recognition. Everything he creates feels flat, borrowed, unoriginal, like a pale imitation of something that's already been done better by someone more talented than him. He reworks the same concepts over and over again, paralyzed by the fear of not being good enough or original or worthy. The deadline approaches closer and closer, and he still hasn't submitted anything solid or complete or remotely ready to present to the client. His boss calls him into the office and asks if everything is okay with him, searching his face with genuine concern and confusion. Daniel says yes and tries to smile convincingly, but his hands are shaking visibly and his voice sounds hollow and distant, even to himself. The night before the final presentation, he sits at his desk staring at a blank screen, waiting for inspiration that never arrives. Hours pass slowly and painfully, and nothing comes. No ideas, no clarity, just a suffocating silence and the weight of his own inadequacy. He misses the deadline completely, and the project is given to someone else, someone who didn't spend weeks drowning in self-doubt and comparison. Daniel goes home that night and doesn't turn on the lights, preferring to sit in darkness that matches the emptiness inside his chest. He sits in the dark and feels the crushing weight of every decision and every moment of fear that led him here. He realizes that comparison hasn't motivated him to be better. It's destroyed him, stolen his confidence, his creativity, his peace, everything that mattered. It's stolen his confidence, his creativity, his peace, his ability to trust himself or believe that he has anything valuable to offer the world. And for the first time, he understands with painful clarity. He's been running a race against ghosts, against illusions, against people who don't care. The next morning, he goes to the park across from his building, needing air and space and something other than the four walls. It's early, the air is cool and clean, and the benches are empty except for one where an old man sits feeding birds. An older man sits there peacefully, feeding pigeons from a small bag of seeds, moving slowly and deliberately, with each gentle toss toward the ground. Daniel has seen him before on other mornings, but never spoken to him, or even thought about who he might be, or what he knows. Today, something pulls him to sit down nearby on the same bench, drawn by a need he can't name or fully understand yet. The man glances over at Daniel and nods once, a simple acknowledgement of another human being sharing the same quiet space in the morning. "Rough night, son?" the man asks, his voice calm and steady and carrying the weight of someone who's lived through many rough nights himself. Daniel lets out a tired laugh that sounds more like a sigh and nods his head, grateful someone noticed and cared enough to ask. "Something like that, yeah," Daniel replies quietly, staring at the pigeons gathering around their feet, pecking at seeds and ignoring the world's chaos completely. The man is quiet for a long moment. Then he speaks again, choosing his words carefully like someone who knows the power they hold. "I used to know a guy who spent his whole life looking at other people's roads, wondering why theirs looked better," he says slowly. Wondered why theirs looked smoother, straighter, more scenic, more filled with joy and success and everything he thought he was missing in life. Took him decades to realize he was standing still the whole time, frozen in place, watching everyone else move while he remained stuck. Daniel looks at him directly now, really seeing him for the first time. This stranger who somehow understands the exact prison he's been living in. What changed for him? Daniel asks, his voice barely above a whisper, desperate for an answer that might offer even the smallest glimmer of hope. The old man smiles faintly, a knowing smile that carries both sadness for time lost and joy for lessons finally learned and understood. He started walking his own road finally, slowly, one step at a time, without looking back or sideways or anywhere, but straight ahead. Stopped turning his head constantly, stopped measuring his progress against others, just walked forward with whatever strength and courage he could find each day. He hands Daniel a seed and gestures toward the pigeons, a simple gesture that somehow feels sacred and symbolic in this quiet morning moment. You can't feed the birds if you're always watching someone else's hand instead of using your own, he says with gentle wisdom. It's a simple sentence, almost too simple, but it lands deep in Daniel's chest like a stone dropping into still water, creating ripples. Daniel stays on that bench for an hour, listening to Richard talk about his life, his mistakes, his journey back to himself after years lost. The man's name is Richard, a retired teacher who once struggled with the same crushing weight of comparison and inadequacy that Daniel knows intimately. He teaches Daniel something unexpected that morning, a daily practice, a small system that seems almost too simple to work, but carries profound power. Every morning when you wake up, write down 3 things you did yesterday, not what others did, just your own actions and choices. Every evening before bed, name 1 moment you were truly present, fully yourself, without performing or comparing or wishing you were someone else entirely. No comparisons allowed, no measurements against others, no looking sideways at what your neighbor or colleague or stranger on the internet accomplished that day. Just your own day, your own steps, your own progress, your own life lived according to your own values and your own quiet definition of success. Daniel starts the very next morning, sitting at his kitchen table with a notebook, feeling awkward and uncertain about this simple practice. It feels awkward at first, almost pointless, like he's just writing meaningless words that won't change anything about his life or his failures. But he continues anyway, day after day, because he has nothing left to lose and nowhere else to turn for help or hope or direction. Day by day, something begins to shift inside him. Subtle at first, like morning light gradually filling a dark room without announcing its arrival. He notices small things he'd been blind to before. The way light falls through his window, the taste of his coffee, the quiet before the city wakes. He stops opening social media first thing in the morning, choosing instead to sit with his own thoughts and his own breath and his own presence. He starts sketching again, not for work or clients or approval, just for himself, for the pure joy of creating something with his own hands. 3 weeks later, his boss offers him another chance at a project, a smaller one, but one that matters to a client he respects deeply. This time, Daniel doesn't compare his work to anyone else's, or second-guess every decision or spiral into paralysis and fear and self-doubt again. He creates something honest and true, something that feels like him, his voice, his vision, without trying to copy or compete with anyone else's style. It's not perfect by any measure, but it's real and authentic, and somehow that makes it more powerful than any polished imitation could be. The client loves it immediately, praising the originality and emotional honesty of the design, saying it's exactly what they were hoping to find but couldn't articulate. His boss congratulates him warmly and mentions a bigger opportunity coming soon, one that could change the trajectory of his entire career if he wants it. But the biggest change isn't external or visible to anyone else. It's something deeper, quieter, more permanent than any professional success could ever be. It's the way Daniel feels when he wakes up now, lighter, freer, more present, like a weight has been lifted from his shoulders finally. The heaviness that used to press down on his chest every morning is lighter now, more manageable, sometimes even completely absent for whole days. The voice that used to scream about his inadequacy is quieter now, a whisper he can choose to ignore rather than a command he must obey. He visits his mother again for dinner, and this time, he's actually there with her, present, listening, laughing, engaged in the moment without distraction. She notices immediately, her eyes lighting up with relief and joy as she watches him eat and talk and smile like he used to years ago. "You're back, my son," she says, smiling with tears in her eyes, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand with overwhelming gratitude and love. He nods, feeling emotion rise in his throat, grateful for her patience and her unwavering belief in him, even when he couldn't believe in himself. "I'm trying to be Mom, one day at a time," he says honestly, no longer pretending to be fine, but actually working toward becoming whole again. On the anniversary of the day he missed that deadline, Daniel returns to the park to find the bench where everything changed for him forever. Richard is there as always, same bench, same pigeons, same quiet presence that radiates peace and wisdom earned through years of living and learning. Daniel sits beside him without speaking and says nothing for a while, just sitting in comfortable silence with the man who saved his life. Then he speaks finally, his voice thick with emotion. He no longer feels ashamed to show or express in front of another human being. "Thank you for that morning, for your words, for seeing me when I couldn't see myself," Daniel says, meaning every word with his whole heart. Richard nods knowingly, as if he's heard this before from others he's helped along the way, and his smile is warm and understanding. "You did all the work yourself, son. I just reminded you where to look, which direction to face, which road is actually yours." Daniel realizes now that comparison was never really about others or their success. It was about not trusting his own path, his own timing, his own worth, his own journey, his own unique way of moving through the world. The moment he stopped looking sideways at everyone else, he started moving forward on his own road, slowly but surely, with growing confidence and peace. And that forward motion, slow and steady and uniquely his, gave him something no highlight, reel or social media post ever could: true inner peace. If this story stirred something deep in you, subscribe, because the life you're building in silence and away from comparison deserves to be honored.